let's start here. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says he was kept in the dark about who donated money to the CR17 campaign, but insists there was no vote buying. Ramaphosa, of course, has just wrapped up his second day testifying at the state capture inquiry, of course speaking as president of the ANC and answering to allegations of corruption within the party. Well, I'm joined now by our two colleagues who have been covering this, Thulasizwe Simelane and Siphamandla Goge, joining me now. Good evening to both of you. Siphamandla, I'll start with you. You're inside the building. We know the president has just finished. Talk to us about day two, and for you, what the overarching feeling from day two was. More of the same after day one, or something significant coming out?
Same as day one, nothing much came up, nothing new. In fact, it was the same script that the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa decided to stick to, saying we acknowledge that mistakes were made, we are really sorry about that, we will fix them, but not providing accountability and transparency in saying how are they going to fix that, and what did he know as the Deputy President of the ANC back then, as well as the Deputy President of the country. And I guess that one will have to be deferred for later when he comes back in his official capacity as the former Deputy President of the country and the current President. But the only thing significant, which is not new by the way, was his explanation about that funding for CR17 campaign, saying, well, there was nothing untoward there, everything was above board, he was kept in the dark by the campaign managers. They created a wall saying he does not need to get involved in terms of knowing who is donating. He says later on he got to know some of the people who donated there, but the majority of his funders, he doesn't know them, even downplaying the amount that was projected to have been raised for that campaign, saying, well, it was not $1 billion, about 300 million if I'm not mistaken, but my colleague Thulasizwe Simelane will pick up on that. But today was mainly about that, him and the CR17 campaign explaining, rehashing what he has said in the past year, even the issue of Bosasa and how the ANC continued to receive funding and donations from Bosasa, the Guptas, as well as those who are accused in the asbestos tender corruption, who are facing serious allegations in Bloemfontein, Free State, including Edwin Sodi, how some of them donated to the ANC and to some members of the party. But other than that, there was nothing much. It was just Cyril Ramaphosa taking a cautious and diplomatic stance of saying, well, we should have done better, we will correct that. In terms of accountability, nothing much. We hope that when he comes back here, because this commission, the evidence leader and the chairperson of the commission, they have been accused by some of being too soft on him, of treating him with kids' gloves. But that's what transpired today. Towards the end, he was quizzed about the issue of the electoral system in South Africa. What are his views in terms of South African voters directly electing their president so that they can have a say and hold them accountable? Well, he said the ANC has not thought about that. They have not discussed it. And then earlier on, he was asked about the issue of party funding and how political parties are funded in South Africa, including the ANC. So those were the issues that were ventilated here today. But the issue of parliamentary oversight and how that oversight, there was a lapse in oversight during the process of state capture, he did concede that, yes, they dropped the ball. They should have done more to provide oversight there.
So, Sipa, has the president actually left the building where you are at the moment?
He has left. I tried to ask for an interview. Yesterday he promised us that when he is done, he will grant us an interview. A few moments ago, before starting this live interview, we asked the president to talk to us, and he said, well, we must speak to ANC communications team, but we said, you are the one who promised us an interview. Of course, he is known for evading journalists and not taking media interviews, but I asked him that some people, his critics, are saying he did not provide anything concrete. He did not help this commission here by what he knew back then and what has been done to correct the situation. He just laughed it off and walked away, apart from saying he is exhausted.
I'm sure he is. All right, Sipa, I'm going to chat to Thulas now. Thulas, of course, this comes at a very interesting time, these 2 days of testimony, a big moment for the ANC, because tomorrow we know is the deadline for those who've been charged with serious crimes in the party. They have to step aside. Chief, among them, of course, Ace Magashule, the Secretary General, who's not been present as part of the delegation to the Commission. And, of course, this issue did come up during the testimony. Tell us a little bit more about that before we listen to the bite.
Yeah, actually, Sally, the deadline was today for those people to have stepped aside or face the consequences that will come. So at this point, we're really waiting for an indication of how many of them, because at the end of the day, it's not just about Ace Magashule, it is about many other people who are charged with corruption and other serious crime that they were given 30 days. That 30 days ends today. But before we get stuck in on the issues that came out from today, Sally, allow me to play technical director on air, in that I'm going to signal to you that you were asking about whether the president has left the building inside the old Johannesburg chambers. Well, you and the team, if I may ask you to be on standby, because where I am located, you'll be able to see in the background in the road that just runs just adjacent to the city of Joburg precinct, the motorcade of the president as and when he does depart. So do keep an eye out for that. And if it happens while we are talking on air, I will pause for a moment to just give you a sense of that, because it is a moment in television, 24 hours, in fact 48 hours of testimony. Right, back to the issue that we are talking about. At about 2:45, Sally, President Cyril Ramaphosa, likening the current process of the state capture inquiry to catharsis and saying that it's a cathartic moment for the African National Congress. I tell you, day two, in the afternoon in particular, did feel like catharsis. It really was talking at length about ANC processes where the ball was dropped, processes inside the ANC, weaknesses within the ANC itself. I did like one question in particular that Advocate Paul Pretorius asked. It wasn't vigorous, even Paul Pretorius himself acknowledging that there's a sense, particularly among media, that says we are treating you with quote-unquote kid gloves. But there was a question he asked about, the ANC has said multiple times that we are, quote, drawing a line in the sand on corruption. Since, as early as the conference in 2012, 2007, you've been saying this, but it seems you just never really get to a point where this becomes reality. And then asking him about the difficulty of why don't you suspend people when they are charged with corruption and basically make sure that there's disciplinary processes happening at the same time as while people are going through the court processes, because according to Paul Pretorius, legally there's no bar to that happening at the same time, given that this is a voluntary organization, the ANC, with its own principles and rules. Listen to how President Cyril Ramaphosa responded to that and wove into that the principle of stepping aside and difficulties that they sometimes face in implementing that.
Chairperson, the difficulty has always been a person is charged, and then at the same time, simultaneously, they are disciplined. They stand trial, and the disciplinary process has been done and concluded, and then they are found not guilty in the formal state the law enforcement. Yeah. So what do you then do? Do you go back and undo? For instance, if the charge was theft in the ANC and the charge is theft in the state, what do you then do when they are found not guilty? And the way we've sought to deal with it is to say, if you have been charged, you should, of a serious crime that has to do with corruption and so forth, you should step aside. And you're then given an opportunity to go and clear your name while having stepped aside. Go clear your name, and having done that, then the disciplinary process in the ANC can then ensue.
So, Tulis, as you were correcting me, in fact, the deadline for the step-aside rule is the end of today. So tomorrow we may see consequences. I know that we're waiting for the President's motorcade to pass you. But while we do that, I think it's important to chat about the CR17 campaign and the issue of the money, where the President said it was deliberately set up so that he didn't have eyes on who was contributing to his internal party president campaign. And he also said it wasn't $1 billion that was raised, it was 300 million. Just tell us a little bit more about what came out about that campaign, because it continues to be a thorn in his side.
So one of the big takeouts for me from today, Sally, is that President Cyril Ramaphosa is banking a lot on the Political Party Funding Act, helping to introduce some kind of hygiene within our party political system. And he is now championing, actually, in fact, today, he has hinted before, but I think today now has been confirmation that he's championing for some kind of, amendment perhaps, or addition and strengthening of that act and other regulations to now cover internal party political campaign funding for individuals within intra-party contestations. And that's because he's really been clobbered with this political shambok around CR17. Very quickly then, he got to answer the questions once more, and the answers are standard, and they've become pretty much the same from when he started answering around, what happened, what he knew when, around CR17 funding and the campaign. He talked about, basically he's dismissing the suggestion that there was R1 billion raised and that was used. But importantly, he says the suggestion that this was used to quote-unquote buy votes, as his detractors and political opponents have suggested, he says that's simply not true. Take a listen to that.
The other part was how the campaign managers then went ahead to raise money for the campaign. It's been said that R1 billion was raised. It was never R1 billion. I'm told that the money that was raised was some 300 million or so, but never R1 billion. But I don't know the full facts, because they've literally decided to keep it away from me. And the money, what was it used for? There's a legend that goes around that the money was used to buy votes, and far from it. And I said to my comrades right at the beginning, I never want to be part of a campaign that is going to descend into all these deviant type of behaviors that we talk about in the ANC about vote buying. And I even said I would rather lose the race rather than have votes bought. So what was the money used for? It was used to transport people, to hire venues. And actually, I got really surprised that it has become so expensive to have all these things like meetings, busing people, feeding people, the paraphernalia, T-shirts, caps, and so forth that have to be given out for the campaign. And I think people who have run campaigns will know that, yes, there is a cost to all that. As it turns out, there is still a debt that still has to be paid in a number of forms and ways after that campaign that happened in 2017.
All right, so Tulis, that was some of the discussion around the CR17 campaign. He also spoke about Gavin Watson, that I think he found out that Gavin Watson had donated to that campaign. Of course, Gavin Watson of Bosasa, and lots of very concerning issues around Bosasa. I think it boils down to the Watson family and the Guptas that are the two main families that most of us think about when we hear about allegations of corruption. Did he get enough of a grilling about his son's relationship with the Bosasas, with his connection with Gavin Watson? What did you make of the way that was treated?
Well, there was that sort of acknowledgement of the commentary around the 2 days of testimony by Advocate Paul Pretorius, as I said earlier on, when he said, You know, Mr. President, it is said in media reportage and analysis that we are treating you with quote-unquote kid gloves. So certainly his detractors and political opponents will say he did get a free pass. But I guess part of the thing that needs to be pointed out, Sally, let me not call it a difficulty, is the reality that he didn't come here at the commission as a implicated person in the technical sense of the use of that phrase by this commission. An implicated person being someone who is implicated by someone else in an affidavit. Yes, his name has come up in the evidence of people such as Brian Molefe, who said at one point he was chairing the ESCOM war room, having come out from being chairperson of Optimum Coal Mine. But, Brian Molefe had to walk back some of those comments, in that it was pointed out to him that, well, he never was chairperson of Optimum Coal Mine, and even at the point at which he was in the war room, he had already relinquished his positions in business, etc. But the technicality is that he didn't come here as an implicated person. Be that as it may, Sally, one of the questions that did come up is around the question of why it is then that some of those records and that many of his political detractors are calling for to be quote-unquote unsealed the CR17 bank statements. It wasn't raised as sharply as, his political opponents would have liked, but it did come up. Here's how he responded to it, about the anonymity of it all, whether or not, removing that sense of anonymity to the donors, to the campaign, would help cleanse our party political system. Listen to how he tackled that issue.
And it was on that type of condition which the campaign managers agreed to. They said, okay, of course you're giving money, and we will keep your information confidential to ourselves. As it has always been the case with a number of monies that are given to political parties. Political parties, by their very nature, go around asking for donations, and I think it will not be surprising for them to hear that other donors don't want the information to be known. So this is now the subject of a major court battle. But in the end, Chairperson, there was nothing sinister, I must say, about the CR17 campaign, nothing underhand.
And let's go straight to...
Did you watch the president's testimony?
No.
Okay. Well, that is Brian Molefe, the former CEO of ESCOM, Sal. I can tell you that he has arrived at the commission. As my colleague Tula Sizwe-Simelane was mentioning earlier on, that this is the man at some point who implicated President Cyril Ramaphosa, but he had to withdraw some of his statements there. So he is here today. I asked him whether he watched the president's testimony. He said no, and I asked him if he will be testifying here today, and he said he will only hear now as he is making his way inside the commission venue there. That is Brian Molefe, the former CEO of ESCOM there. He is one of the people, of course, who have implicated the president, but he had to withdraw some of those remarks that he made here about the president's role and the chairmanship when it comes to those mining companies which had some coal supplies at ESCOM. I'm going to try and make my way down here, Sally. I'll tell you why I'm making my way down these stairs. The president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, is still here. You can see his security detail is here. He's having a consultation meeting with some members and leaders of the ANC. If I can ask my colleague Joe Komane to come with me. They are still locked inside that building that you see there. That's where ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, ANC Head of Policy Jeff Hadebe, Treasurer General Paul Mashatile, and other NEC members, including Ronald Lamola, who is the Minister of Justice. But let's point out that all those who came here today accompanying the ANC President came in their capacity as ANC and EC members. So he is still in the building there. I think they are having a debrief session because, remember, this is the team that was supporting him here because he appeared on behalf of the governing party, the ANC. He will come back towards the end of May. Let's remind our viewers was that the dates that were set up earlier on, which is the 13th and 14th of May, for him to come back in his capacity as the former Deputy President of the Republic and the current President, those dates have been pushed further. We will hear from the Commission as to when exactly he is coming back, but it's towards the end of May.
All right, Sipha, thank you very much for giving us that hot off the press interview with Brian Molefe. And it does look like.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
here we go.
Coming. I can tell you that I can see that the Presidential Protection Services is making the way clearing here for the President of the ANC to make his way out. Okay, we've been asked to the President. Okay. We are told that ANC leaders are coming here. Let's see who we're going to get. The President is still here, Sally. We'll try and get some reaction from those who came here to accompany the President. We did try to stop him earlier on to ask him about his testimony here, but he decided. Let's speak to the head of policy here. Jeff Radebe, thank you very much for your time. Your President has presented here, but your critics, as the ANC will say, there was nothing much really. You admitted all the mistakes you made. You didn't provide transparency and accountability. How are you going to fix that?
If there is transparency and openness and honesty, this is what the President Ramaphosa did this morning and yesterday till this afternoon, of course, on behalf of the African National Congress. What he said yesterday and today is a reflection of the recollection of all the events and episodes that happened during the period under review.
But as the ANC, you are being accused of being too vague and too generic, particularly on the question that was asked inside by the Commission to say, why did you keep on accepting donations from Bosasa, the Guptas and others who are accused of corruption? As I'm going to ask my colleague as we stay with this interview, Pungane, my colleague Joko Mane will stay with the visuals of the President there. But why did you not answer that question, particularly about that? Let's see if Mr. President, once again, Mr. President, can we try once again, one more time? Sorry?
I say you heard me.
Okay, well, basically the President is saying, no, let's bring it back to you, Pungane. The question of funding, why did you continue to accept money from the Guptas and others who are implicated and who are accused in corruption, including Bosasa?
Well, the President explained very well how all those issues arose. As you will much understand, that the issues of fundraising has never been properly regulated in the Republic of South Africa. It is only under President Ramaphosa that we have now the private bill that has now been passed, and it's an act of parliament that regulates the funding of political parties as of the 1st of April this year, and it also sets a limit above which donors cannot be able to put money into political parties. So we learn by experience, and the weaknesses that has been seen is not only a reflection of ANC, but all political parties in South Africa as a whole.
But those weaknesses are costing South Africa as a country. You are the governing party. You were slow in acting. You were alerted about allegations of state capture. You took your time. You closed the ranks and defended each other.
No, not really. As you know, matters that involve corruption are always done in a covert manner, in secret, not above board. So the majority of people in South Africa and also in the ANC would not have been aware of all the intricacies that took place. But what is important now is that now that we know, we have to wait for the recommendations of the Zondo Commission, but already steps are being taken to correct all those mistakes, as has been evidenced by the decisions and resolution of the last conference of the ANC, as well as the decisions of the National Executive Committee.
Tomorrow is the deadline for step aside, Pungane. You are the head of policy in the ANC. You sit in the NEC. What will happen tomorrow?
Well, we have a special meeting of the National Executive Committee on the 8th of May, next week, Saturday. So those matters will be finally ventilated there.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. That is Jeff Radebe, an ANC and EC member and the head of policy for the governing party. As we take it back to you, Saleh.
Well, thank you so much for being so agile and for getting us all those impromptu moments. Thank you so much, Siphamandla Goge, and also earlier to Thulisizwe Simelane, who've been covering the President's testimony, today's testimony at the State Capture Inquiry. Stay with us.